one rule. 2 questions, 1 question. 2 rules and 2 questions, 1 rule and 1 question. It's a day of questions and rules, it seems. We need rules. Rules are good. They show us what we should do, how we should relate to people, what we should be about. You probably have rules in every avenue of your life. I've been a runner for the last 2.5 years now, and I've noticed 2 rules about running. Not about stretching, or about what intervals to do, or distances, or what to eat or drink, or how much to sleep, or any of those kinds of things. You can get all of that on the internet. Mine's a little more of an organic study. 2 rules about being a runner. One is to wave, and the other is to help. The first rule is to wave. Now, I'm a naturally friendly person, so I usually wave at people. And I'm a Midwesterner, so I guess I expect a response, but most of the time people don't. Except runners always wave. They always wave. Whether it's a 2-fingered salute, or just a little nod of the head, or even just a raised hand as you're going by on the street or a path, or going in different directions, there seems to always be this acknowledgement that you're part of the guild, too. You're part of this community of people. And so people wave when they run. And when they don't, it's a little disconcerting, and you have this reaction, like, why don't they know the rule? There's a second rule, too, and that's to help. I've also noticed, as a runner, that people that are runners help each other out a lot, even though you're running against each other sometimes. You're always willing to share information about all those other things I mentioned before, the best diet and sleep techniques and stretches and all of those things. And also, even in the midst of a race, if someone is in need, people stop and take care of one another. It's uncanny almost. I was running in the half marathon in Hartford last week, Saturday, and we were about a mile out of the gate. So there's 13,000 runners or so, all in one spot, and then they're going to break after about a mile and a half into the people that are running the half marathon, which I was, and people that were running the full marathon. So for that first mile or so, it's packed pretty tightly, full of people. And the person who was running next to me was talking to the person next to him, and he had sunglasses on. But they weren't really on, they were kind of on his forehead. And as he turned to see which direction he needed to go, because they were starting to shout at us which runners were going which way, the sunglasses fell off of his head. And instinctively, he bent over to pick them up and was plowed over by someone behind him. And by the time I turned around, which was like a split second later, there were already 6 people helping both of them up. Even in a race like that. And when I ran the full marathon a year ago, I noticed this especially during those toughest miles. Those high teen, early 20 miles, when you really feel completely isolated. You're really only thinking about pulling one foot in front of the other. But yet when we'd stop at a water station, people then would talk. Are you doing okay? Are you hanging in there? You can do it. It's almost weird to see someone pull up short or have a cramp or go off to the side and not see another person next to them right away. And if you don't see it, you again want to answer that question. Don't you know the rule? That's what they're asking Jesus today. Do you know the rule of Jesus? And what's the most important one? It's a test. And Jesus, who's never shy, gives them 2. The first rule, he says, is love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. A pretty good one. It's found in Deuteronomy. It's not one of the 10 Commandments, but it is a good summary. It's one that a lot of people had memorized. They would know this. And he names it so perfectly that the number one thing our lives are supposed to be about is to love God. It's to wait. To acknowledge that we are part of the guild of humanity created in God's image. That is who we're supposed to be. It reflects the 10 Commandments pretty well, especially those first ones. That if you love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, then you know there's one God. Then you're going to use God's name the right way. Then you're going to remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. But then he adds a second one to it, the one that we just heard from Leviticus. Love your neighbor as yourself. And he says it's just like the first one, which sounds a little strange, at least to me. Loving God and loving your neighbor, I think, are two different things sometimes. But he says they're alike. It's like the Ten Commandments too, the rest of them. Because if you're loving God with all your heart, soul, and mind, then you respect your parents and those in authority. You respect life around you. You respect families and marriages around you. You respect people's things. You respect the truth. You're thankful for what you have, both in your relationships and the things you've been given. One is like the other. If you are loving God, then you love people too. And I think Jesus would say if you're loving other people, you're also loving God, maybe even if you're not aware of it. Which is why he asks his question, this second question today. I've told you the rules. Now, what do you think of the ruler? What do you think of the Messiah? Or to put it another way, who's got your number? When you run in a race, you get a little bib, what they call them, and it's this kind of high-strength paper with a number on it. It lets you know that you're registered for the race, that you've got your credentials in order. And on the back side of it now is where they put the little computer chip so they can record your time accurately. They're asking for Jesus' credentials. How do we know, Jesus, that you are the Messiah? So they ask him the rule, but he turns it around on them. Do you know the ruler and who's got your number? Last year I ran the full marathon with a friend named Jay, and we decided to run the half marathon together this year too. So we kept reminding each other this spring, are you going to run? Are you going to run? Are you training yet? Have you registered yet? No, I haven't. You got to register. Yeah, me too. Did you register yet? Yes, I have. Did you register? Yes, I have. Did you get your training sheet printed off? Yes. So we went down to the Hartford Civic Center to pick up our numbers. We stood in the line. You have to show your driver's license so they know it's you. And the person checking me in said, you've got a great number this year. He pulled it out, 9,000. It was great. Nice, even number. I knew I wasn't quite out of it yet. 9,000, that's good. And my friend Jay turned around and he said, you're never going to believe this. And he pulled out of his bag 8999. It's like we registered at the same moment, even though we didn't. Who's got your number? Jesus asks. He uses this psalm, the one we heard today, in a way that almost seems confusing to us. The Lord says to my Lord. He identifies David as the speaker in this psalm. David is one of the most important people in the Old Testament, especially if you're going to have a conversation about the Messiah, because he was not just a king, he was kind of the king. And if we're going to have a new king, he's going to be like David. And so when he asks them about the Messiah, they all answer, oh yeah, it'll be just like David. He'll be in the lineage of David, which of course Jesus is. But it's not about Jesus' credentials. He turns it around. He says, my Lord says to my Lord, David says to his Lord. David got his credentials from me, not the other way around. And who's got your number? God has our number. Jesus has our number. We have been credentialed. Yes, we have these two rules to waive and to help, but they're also in the context of being claimed. That we have our number taken already by the one who lived and died for you and for me and gives us a new life to live. But there's another thing about running too. Often running is an individual sport. I mean, you have to be the one to put one foot in front of the other. But encouragement helps. And encouragement helps a lot. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. And when I think of loving myself, I think I'm pretty good at it sometimes. We're self-centered sometimes. We're self-absorbed. We tune the rest of everybody out. That's not the love he's talking about. He's talking about the love that he's given us, because he's got our number. It's a love that is self-sacrificing and self-giving towards others, just as he is with us. And we need that kind of encouragement. It's the kind of love when you're training for a big race like that, and it's wet outside and raining and cold, and you don't want to get out of bed because you're tired and it's warm. And you're told, if you're going to train for this race, get out of the bed and get going. And you lace up your shoes and you go. It's the kind of love that cheers for you. Not just in some kind of generic way, but for you specifically. To encourage you in the things you are doing, in the struggles that you have, in the pains in your life, in the doubts that you can put one foot in front of the other anymore. It's the kind of love that holds up big signs. I'm always amused by so many signs in a big race like that. Of course, my kids made me some, but there were others that I found even more humorous. There was one about halfway through that said, the reason your feet hurt so much is because you're kicking so much butt. I said, all right, I'm starting over from the scratch now. I can go a few more miles. There was another one I found amusing near the end that said, run faster, the beer's almost gone at the finish line. I thought that was humorous. Reminded me of something Tammy said, that if you want a better race time, you should just run faster. And it reminded me of that, and I was amused, and it helped me keep going. There was another sign that wasn't for me, but it felt like it was. There was this family sitting on the side of the road. There was maybe 3 or 4 young kids, and I presume the mother and either his or her parents. And it was a big sign, and it said, Go Jeff Go, spelled exactly like mine, Geoff. And as I was running by, I came next to them and said, hey, my name is Jeff, spelled just like that. And they cheered for me. Go Jeff, go, go, go. This is what it means to be the church. We have these rules to love God and to wave, but we also have this great encouragement for one another. To love one another as ourselves. To know that we are claimed by God. That we, at times, need some extra support, and it's there. There are times when we're off track, and we need some encouragement to come back the right direction. We have this self-centeredness sometimes that tunes everybody out, and it's that same kind of love that reins us back in and reminds us. Because Jesus does have your number. And all of us have been called to run. And on this day, we are reminded with these 2 rules that there is one rule. And that is his rule over our lives. So that we can lace up our sneakers and get out there again. Amen.